From the center of the universe, now in its 7th season covering your 19-time Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast with Argos color analyst Ben Grant and Coach JB.
Welcome to the X's and Argos podcast, brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. My name is Ben Grant. I'm joined as always by JB, and it is here, folks. The CFL season is just around the corner. We had some CFL football today in BC, and the Argos, with their own brand of CFL football with an inter-squad scrimmage, the Double Blue game. We're going to tell you all about that today. We're also going to give you a little bit of insight into what we see in terms of positional groups as we head into the Argos' first preseason game coming up this Saturday. Fireworks are exploding in the background behind me, which you might be able to hear, but probably won't be able to see. And that sort of reflects the mood that I feel, JB, right now, as we actually got to watch something a little bit like football today. So we'll get into all that for you. And before we do, I just want to tell you a little bit about Something in the Water Brewing. You don't need it to be an Argos game to go visit Something in the Water Brewing. They are a great place to go enjoy a beer on the patio. It's a perfect location right in the heart of Liberty Village. It steps from BMO Field and, of course, steps from the Argos practice facility at Lamport Stadium. They've got a ton of great beers. If you're in the neighborhood, bring a friend by, drop in, say hello, and make sure you try one of their awesome beers. They've got so many to choose from. And of course, once Argo season starts, you know you're going for a Longboat Pale Ale, and it's the perfect place to stop before, after practice, before, after games, because of its location. Something in the Water with us again this season, and we couldn't be happier about it. All right, JB, let's get into the Double Blue game. So first of all, we've both coached through games like this or scrimmages like this. I guess from a coaching standpoint, what are you looking for? If you're Coach Dinwiddie and you send your guys out today to go through a bunch of sort of scripted scenarios, what are you trying to get out of this?
I think... Honestly, I think what you're looking for is you're looking for people to flash. That you can see people run drills, you can see who's paying attention in the meeting room. But what you want to see, I think what you're looking for in a day like today, anytime you have a scrimmage, is to somebody do something unexpectedly athletic. Whether it be a quick a catch or a tackle, but something that catches your eye and changes your perspective on players. There's that old football line about you don't want players that only do what you tell them to do. So I think that's what you're looking for, and you're hoping that maybe there's something you missed, because sometimes guys are different when it comes to competing than they are in a drill.
Yeah, there are certainly players that aren't practice players. They're more gamers, as we'd call them. And this is sort of, I guess, as close as you can get to a preseason game. And you're hoping to see, maybe guys that you haven't really got, guys that you saw something from on film, and they came into camp and you're like, well, where's this that we saw in film? Where's the stuff that we brought this guy in for? And maybe you're hoping a day like today will be where that comes out. Now, the other thing, days like this, I like to use for players that I don't really have a great feel for. And that's why I'm less likely to have a large amount of playing time for players I'm comfortable with. And yet the balancing act is you can't just only have new guys in there, because you need to put some talent and some known quantities around the guys that you're evaluating. And so in a game like this, like we see DeVaris Daniels out there, for example, and DeMonte Coxie, you say, well, why, obviously Coach Dinwiddie is very familiar with Daniels and Coxie. Why are they out there for the scrimmage? Well, it's not necessarily them that you're evaluating. You're looking at the guys covering them. You're looking at the quarterbacks throwing to them. You're looking at how everyone responds around them. And so you do want to mix in your starters to a degree. And I thought we saw enough of that today where we could get a little bit of a sense for who was really being evaluated. So maybe we'll get into some of the stats that we took. These are unofficial stats. There are no stats for a scrimmage, but we did our best sitting up there in the booth, scribbling down numbers as quickly as we could. We feel pretty good about the accuracy of our numbers here, I'd say. So, JB, why don't we go through some of those stats, and then we'll go through, maybe what they mean, and a little bit at positional groups, guys that might have stood out, and carry that into building a depth chart of sorts. So, in terms of the quarterback room, Chad Kelly did not play in the scrimmage. He has been recovering from a broken leg suffered in the East Final in Montreal. And if you haven't heard any news about Chad Kelly, the last we heard on that is that he's about 50-50 for being able to start the season. And so not getting into a situation like this, I think, is smart at this stage, even if you felt he could go. I think with a player as important as Chad Kelly is to this team, you would rather err on the side of caution here. And even if you get to week one and you're not 100% sure, you have to sit him, because he just means too much. He means more than 1 week of the season, 2 weeks of the season. And so I was not surprised not to see him in action today, although he was there, obviously. And we got a lot more action from the other three quarterbacks, Nick Arbuckle, Cameron Dukes, Tucker Horn. So quarterbacks numbers, Nick Arbuckle was the starter, quote unquote starter. That completed 6 of 8 passes. That's 75% for 65 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Cameron Dukes followed him. And I think we saw the most action from Cam Dukes. That to me was maybe interesting, because I would have felt like you maybe want to see more from Tucker Horn. The fact that we had Dukes out there so often, I think they really are taking a close look at him. He ended up going 8 of 14, 57% of his passes complete. 75 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And then Tucker Horn, new to the Argos, signed in the offseason, 6 of 9 passes completed. That's 67% for 66 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. JB, what'd you make of the quarterback play? And maybe you can chime in on resting Chad Kelly as well, because I didn't give you a chance to reflect on that.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. I think that's a pretty significant injury he's coming back from. I'd be pretty surprised if he played any of the exhibition season. That wasn't a surprise to me at all. I thought the quarterbacks played well today. I mean, it was definitely offense's day.
Not if
still
you're running
a lot
back.
of more underneath stuff than I would have hoped for, in this kind of exhibition. I thought they took some shots downfield. Nobody really stood out. I'd have to say, I thought that they all kind of looked the same. If, to be honest, the three of them, I didn't really notice there to be, which is maybe a good thing. Like, nobody was considerably worse. So I'll take the positive angle.
And before we continue on with quarterbacks, just to give you a sense, if you haven't been to a double blue game before, how this works, it is sort of situational. Like, some drives you'll start a little deeper than others. Sometimes there's a clock involved. Sometimes it's a down and distance scenario. This one started off almost like an actual game where you had a kickoff, but it was to me, so funny always watching stuff like this, because JB is a special teams enthusiast. And watching them line up for a kickoff with nobody deep and then fake kicking the ball just to kind of go through the motions was amusing to me. And then doing the same with field goal kicking. Now, of course, you've got Harilahu recovering. Is maybe not 100%, but there are other kickers that could have gone with. JB, what do you make of the fake kicking and so forth?
A long-standing anti-kicking bias that exists at every level of football. So they didn't let the kickers kick. I mean, what can I say? I don't know why. They have, plenty of footballs. They certainly could have just picked the ball up after they kicked it, but I guess they wanted to get straight to the football part of things.
Yeah, indeed. There was one punt, and that was as much kicking or punting as anybody had in the double blue game. But yeah, let's get back to those quarterbacks. So with all three quarterbacks, Nick Arbuckle to me looked by far the most comfortable, and he should. That makes sense. He's the Grey Cup MVP, and he 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He looked every bit the veteran that he is. He picked apart the defense. He saw what was happening. He never looked confused by anything, and he shouldn't really at this stage. He looked to me the way I think you should, with the fewest attempts, had the most yards and the most touchdowns. And to me, that was a reflection of what we saw from him. He was the best quarterback, in my opinion, of the three, and that shouldn't really be a surprise. Cameron Dukes, I thought he did push the ball downfield, and I commented to you as we were watching that a couple times where I think in the past we might have seen checkdowns from him, because that has always been the criticism of Dukes, is that he allows defenses to really shut down space and close in towards the line of scrimmage. And I feel like he's making a concerted effort to break free of that and taking some deep shots, a couple near completions to DeMonte Coxey deep down the field. That's not the kind of football I'm used to seeing from Dukes. I love that from him. I know his completion percentage suffered a little bit from that 57%. Obviously, you'd like to see higher than that, but I do like the fact that he kept his eyes downfield, and he had opportunities where he could have run. He could have tucked the football and gone. Didn't take advantage of any of those. None of the quarterbacks did. There were no quarterback rushing yards, but Dukes could have taken off a few times, but he wanted to give his receivers a chance to make a play and did that. So I actually was not necessarily impressed with him, but I'm pleased to see that he's working on the development of his game. Tucker Horn, sorry, go on.
No, he's had a lot of real-time CFL experience, so I think it's easy to see how much better he is now than he was, even a year ago. I'm sure he's much more confident. I think he feels pretty confident in his roster spot and is willing to. I think exactly as you say. I mean, we saw it a little bit in some of his final regular season stuff, that he knows he has to push the ball down the field. He just can't, he can't throw the underneath stuff. Everybody is sitting on it. So I'm really excited to see him in preseason. I'd really like to see if he can continue that in preseason with live play.
What I liked is that in previous seasons, you've needed the magic to have him be successful, like those scramble plays where everything breaks down. He's running with his hair on fire and just able to get the ball out. And that's where he's been able to score points and get yards. I like that he didn't try to do any of that today. And that's still there. And I do think, I'm not saying there's not value in that. I think that's an important part of his game. But you have to also be able to play under control in phase and still run the offense. And him doing that today, I thought, was a positive step.
Yeah, I thought all three quarterbacks moved around the pocket really well today.
And we'll get to the offensive line play, which I think helped to a degree with the quarterbacks. But just before we do, Tucker Horn, the last quarterback, I think, probably for Tucker Horn, I'm imagining we're seeing him as a practice roster quarterback. I think there's something to like in his game. He did not look out of place at all. He wasn't out there a ton. He was the last quarterback out, and he wasn't always going up against the ones or twos necessarily. But I thought he performed admirably. I thought he made good reads. I thought he had a couple really nice throws, showed some zip. He doesn't have the same cannon that some of the guys do. He has to put effort into the zip that he puts on the ball. But he can do that, and he can sort of find that gear. I thought he played within himself, didn't try to be a hero, and I liked what I saw there. I think probably we're looking at these four quarterbacks in exactly that order, where Chad Kelly's your starter, Nick Arbuckle's the guy that's going to go in, Dukes is your third, and Tucker Horn's probably on the practice roster. But it was a good first day for him, if we want to call it that. JB, why don't we do running back yards, and then maybe we'll transition to talk a bit about the offensive line, because then we kind of covered a little bit of quarterbacks and running backs. We can sort of say what we saw and why there was and wasn't success. Running the football in an inter-squad scrimmage like this, where you've got, yes, you have an officiating crew, but no one's really being tackled to the ground. It's thud. It's not full contact. This is the worst environment for a running back. It's some defensive players will also tell you it's the worst environment for them, but really this punishes running backs more than anyone else, because you don't get any yards after contact. Players just tap you on the shoulder and they're like, yeah, he's down. And obviously we know that, especially these running backs, that's not how that works. So you had Deontay McMahon was the lead back. He had 2 carries for 26 yards. His first carry, first play of the game, was a 27-yarder. Huge hole opened up, and he scrambled through it, went for 27, and then -1 on a second carry. Chop Williams, the power back, 5'8" power back, wasn't able to show his stuff because, again, this isn't an environment conducive to his success. He had 3 carries for 3 yards with a long of 2 yards. And then Jaron Mitchell, 1 carry for -2 yards. I'm glad they only had 6 total carries. I actually felt that was too many because in this environment, you just can't evaluate running backs. And I'm not even sure how well you can evaluate the offensive line given that all of the defenders need to do is touch the running back to call them down. But did you make anything of the running backs today, or was this just kind of a throwaway for you two?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's much to be gained. I mean, nobody like I mean, if I could have a general statement about today, I didn't think anybody really popped, which is okay, but certainly nobody running back wise surprised. I thought that the power back, looked slow as you would expect from they're not going to have acceleration, like McMahon. I thought he looked nice on that run. I was really well blocked run. He looked quick, so I think that's good, and just kind of put it away from there.
Yeah, and not surprising not to see like Kadeem Carey in there, and Wyndham McManus wasn't dressed as well. Dejon Brissett. There's a bunch of guys that were out today. Some guys that are coming back from injury, surgery. Other guys that are just being rested. But in terms of the backs, like this really isn't the day to evaluate backs. There's gonna be plenty of running plays to evaluate backs in the 2 preseason games, and so that's where it's going to be done. But Chop Williams, 5'9" or 5'8", 225 to 240, somewhere in that range. And he's a load, but he takes a second to get going. And so this just isn't the environment for him. But let's talk about that offensive line. They did open up a couple holes, but they really impressed me in terms of their pass protection. How much of that is the offensive line looking really good, and how much of it is maybe the concern that we've been bringing up this offseason about the very new Argos defensive line?
Well, I mean, that's the $1 million question. I agree with you. The offensive line was the best positional group on the field. I thought they looked really good. I thought especially the left side really anchored in. They picked up twists. The defense brought some heat. They brought some overloads. They brought some twists. It wasn't just vanilla out there. I thought they did a great job of giving a pocket and also a pocket for the quarterback to move up into. So that was encouraging. I think that was the most positive takeaway was how well the offensive line, even as they rolled through the substitutes, was able to hold up. Now, I don't think we've talked about the defensive line has lost a lot of players from the last 2 years.
If you're including 2 years, they've lost like almost $2 million worth of defensive line talent.
Yeah, I mean, it's a murderer's row when you start naming off the people that they have lost off the defensive line. So eventually, you have to. Eventually, that is going to cause a problem. And the defensive line. I think from a speed point of view and from like a one-on-one elite pass rush point of view was not there today. The defense definitely had to send a lot of heat to get pressure. They were not able to beat any of the offensive line one-on-one, or very rarely. I think it's probably a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I think the defensive line is a work in progress, and the offensive line dominated today.
The biggest takeaways for me in terms of personnel on the line, like you talked about that left side of the line, mostly there we're talking about Sage Dockstader at left guard and George Moore at left tackle. And I don't know that we felt 100% confident well, I know we didn't feel 100% confident that those would be the guys at those positions we were talking about. We haven't really seen too much of Doc Stater. We know how gifted a player he was in the NCAA. We were waiting for him as a draft pick for a couple of years to get up here. Finally got up here. There's a lot of excitement, and we didn't know, is he going to play tackle? Is he going to play guard? It looks based on today's usage, and it's limited, and just in terms of how he's been used this preseason, I think we're looking at a guard spot for him, which is always what we'd sort of projected. But the left side is interesting, and him being paired there with George Moore, the tackle out of Oregon, I thought they looked fantastic together. Now, we have speculated that the front office must really see something in Moore, because he had a few problems last season. Was having trouble getting in and out of the lineup, and the fact that he was still here at this stage, I think, speaks to the level of ability that the front office saw in him, or maybe the coaching staff saw in him. And so for him to be out there with the ones at left tackle, that really shows you how much they believe this guy has the talent to be a starting left tackle in this league. And so to see him not just out there, but absolutely shutting down the defense on that side. Nobody got past Moore and Doc Stater when they were paired on that left side together. And so to me, that was highly encouraging, because we know what a lot of the rest of the line is. Like at times there where you've got Nicastro at center, Vandal was at right guard a lot. We saw Ryan Hunter over in the right tackle spot, suggesting that maybe the plan is going to be to go ahead with the 4 Canadians on the offensive line. We always were, in having 4 Canadians on the O-line, it was always contingent on getting enough from Doc Stater. And not only did they have enough from him, they actually we're in the conversation right now with him being a starting guard. And so this was a team that already has a handful of starting guards. This really is a position of strength for the Argos. I don't see any reason why you can't go with 4 Canadians, because you've got guys that are proven. Even every single guard in this, pretty much everybody except Sirocco and Nicastro played tackle in university too. So there's positional versatility there. I think that's probably where they go. But were you surprised at all to see Hunter on the other side of that line, JB, or is this just another thing that this guy can do? He seems to be able to do everything.
Well, it's right. It's such a luxury having him. I'm sure the coaching staff is just couldn't be more grateful, because if he is able, switching left and right is definitely, from everything I have read and heard, is much harder than people might think. It flips everything. It can throw off your footwork. And the fact that he feels confident, or they feel confident enough in him that they can move him and let the other guys play on the side that they're more comfortable with. That's a great thing. Moore, I thought, really looked nice today. He really anchored in. There was certainly no chance of anybody bull rushing or powering him to the inside. Now, we'll see come the game if he can handle the speed rush. But from today looked great in terms of him being able to get people in his hands and really lock them down.
Yeah, some guys seem to be able, in my experience, guys don't learn very easily to switch from one to the other. Some guys can just do it, and other guys just never can. It's just never the same for them, and you can rep it as much as you like, but they're always going to be significantly better on the left or the right side. But yeah, some guys just seem to just, without even having played on one side, can just flip that, and mechanically they're fine. I don't know how certain guys do it, but Hunter seems to be.
I think a hockey analogy works there, right? Guys are left wingers or right wingers, and they rarely. You would think you could just flip, but it just doesn't happen very often.
So that O-line, just because we haven't had a chance to talk about it yet, let's not forget, if you haven't seen the news, the Argos also were able to add Anim Dankwa to the roster this past week. He's a draft pick from a few years ago, spent some time in the NFL, and like Ryan Hunter did in a way, and he's come up now to join the Argos, and that's another load of a human being at 6'8", 330 to suddenly inject into your offensive line room. I love this positional group. It is my favorite positional group right now on the Argos, because it is the best in the league, and I don't think you can make any argument. And let's not forget, like, this is a positional group that lost Dejan Allen in the offseason to a trade, and we'll see how that's going for the BC Lions, I guess, as things go forward. But this positional group, I don't think is going to miss a beat. I think they are going to once again be the best offensive line in the league because they're so deep. You can dress 2 full offensive lines that you feel pretty good about at this stage. So, I loved watching them pass protect and just make life easy for those quarterbacks back there. Let's get into the receivers. Receiving numbers a little bit all over the place because, like I said off the top, you want to keep Coxie and Tavares in there a little bit to a degree. You don't necessarily want to feed them all day long, and they didn't. Most of these targets went to guys the coaches are trying to assess still. So Mayala with 4 catches, he's a new addition, obviously, but has a lot of starting experience. I think the coaching staff really wants to see, what can we get out of Mayala here. 4 catches, 36 yards, long of 20. The other guy that got a ton of targets was Shane Hooks. A new ad, 4 catches, 51 yards, long of 30. Nice deep pass, actually. Neither one of those guys able to get into the end zone. Tavares somehow got into the end zone on a bit of a weird play that felt like it was going to get blown dead at the 2 somehow, but they gave him the touchdown. He had 1 catch for 12 yards and a touchdown. Janarian Grant with 2 catches, 19 yards. They were trying to feed him a little bit just to get him going. Dante Demis, 3 catches, 46 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He made himself available around the end zone. I was able to shake free. He actually stood out to me a little bit today. I don't know how much room there is in terms of receiving spots on this roster because there's so many talented Canadians on this roster that I think you're probably looking at 3 Canadians starting because I feel like it's almost a waste if you don't. And so you're only really looking at 2 American spots. Coxie and Tavares is going to be there. Janarian Grant is going to be kick returning, punt returning, so he'll be coming off the bench or getting some play. Doesn't leave a lot of spots. But yeah, Demis, I thought, really impressed me today. Jaron Mitchell, the running back, was able to leak out for 2 receptions for 16 yards. Kevin Mittal in there very briefly, 1 catch, 14 yards. Marquise McLean, 1 catch, 9 yards, and David Ungerer, 1 catch, 3 yards, and a touchdown in there, getting open by the uprights for a short score. Any receivers stand out to you, or are you with me that this is probably not a positional group they're looking at too carefully in terms of starters coming out of nowhere?
No, it's a very deep position group. I think it's probably the deepest position group on the roster in terms of things being set with veteran players. I don't see there being much room. I mean, I think I thought that Hooks looked nice today. Looked like he had a bit of waggle to him. But no, I mean, nothing made you feel like there was going to be any major changes. I don't think anybody's going to unseat any of the veterans. So, I think you're looking at a nice, collection of players, and they don't have a ton of sort of water bug receivers, if you will. Angerer sort of does that. So I think that's good if they can bring somebody in on the roster who can fill that position for like red zone, kind of keep teams having to be aware of that instead of like the more traditional route running receivers that they have. So, I thought that it was a deep position that just continues to look deep.
Yeah, most of their guys are well over 6 feet, and like Shane Hooks we talked about out of Auburn, 6'4", 190. He has a lot more quickness than I was expecting to see from him.
Honestly, I thought he had real start stop. I was really impressed by that, actually.
And Demis is a load. Like he's got 30 pounds on Hooks. He's at 6'3", and he's a pretty tough guy because of the way he bodies you. I thought he put on a little bit of a show today too. So I think there are going to be some I think there are going to be some really good battles in these two preseason games for even practice roster spots at the receiver position, especially the American receiver position. But there's some real talent in that room right now. So yeah, really impressed by that. Other things that we saw in the game before we start talking just a little bit about the defense. There were a couple scrimmage variables. There was one sack, quote unquote sack. Again, you got to take that with a grain of salt because everything's blown dead so early. Andrew Chatfield Jr., defensive end, got in for a sack. We saw an interception from defensive back Deontay Hood. And then Derek Sluka, who has been a receiver sort of playing DB, came away with a pick, but somebody was offside on the play. We didn't get a number. That one didn't end up counting as much as anything can count in a scrimmage like this. But it was kind of cool to see, just again, the level of talent. Like imagine, I know people are maybe desensitized to it because of what Travis Hunter is doing right now in his conversations in the NFL, but being able to, as a professional athlete, be like, yeah, I can be a receiver and also play a little bit of halfback here is pretty impressive. So it was cool to see Sluka get in there for a pick. But yeah, those were the variables, I guess, that stood out. 3 penalties in total on the day, a procedure call on the offensive line, offside on the defense, which cost that pick, and then a 34-yard defensive pass interference penalty. We couldn't tell who that was on. There were 2 suspects. I don't want to throw their names out there just in case we're wrong on this, but that was a big play that led to an offensive score on the very next play. So what do you make of the defense? We talked about the defensive line not really showing too much, but we should say that not everyone's in there. Like, yes, they've lost a lot of guys too, but we didn't see a lot from Derek Parrish. We didn't see Ojo out there. So I do think they're getting more a look at guys they don't know much about. And from a linebacker standpoint, we're not watching Judge and McManus that they're watching everybody else. The defensive secondary, I did think we got a bit more from, because we did get to see McFadden playing out there with Deontay Evans on the other side at corner. No Tyshawn Blackburn. He was out today, so we didn't get that safety question really answered for us. But they've got, what I love about that DB room right now? You've got at least 3, if not 4 guys who are just as comfortable at corner as they are at halfback. Deontay Evans, Tavares McFadden are both excellent corners and excellent halfbacks. I love them both at both spots. Darius Bratton, we know him as a halfback from his time in Edmonton, but he was a star corner at, I think it was Virginia that he was at. That was his spot. He was a corner that learned the halfback spot immediately when he came up here with Edmonton. And then Milton too, like he's a guy that can play both of those roles. So there's so much positional versatility in that DB room. We're just waiting to see what they do at that safety spot. But I thought while they didn't necessarily flash, I thought that defensive secondary looked pretty good considering scrimmages are usually offensive showcases.
Yeah, they did. I mean, there weren't any busts, which was nice. Almost all the catches were contested. So, like from a defensive coach point of view, you might consider that a positive. They seemed a little behind the offense. I think defensively we've talked about this. I think the Argos, as they're constituted right now, I think are an offense first team. I think the offense is deeper. I think more will be expected of the offense, and the defense will be a little bit of work in progress. The defense didn't quite have the swagger maybe we have seen in past years, where they were sort of right on top of the offense and more pass breakups, more noise, if you will, coming at the offense. I thought the defense looked okay, but it's going to take some rebuilding. I mean, it's that side of the ball has taken a real hit from the rest of the league. So, it's not surprising to me that it's going to take some time to build up that kind of energy and swagger again.
I'm not at all worried about the linebackers or the DBs. I think there are going to be very good positional groups, but both of those positional groups can get hurt so easily with poor defensive line play. And that's the concern. We talked about that. I don't want this to be the focus of the podcast, but I do think that's something we need to look for very carefully in preseason is, are we getting any pressure from that defensive line? I'm not really that interested in run stopping. To me, that's not a big part of CFL football success. I know you agree with me on that too. But I think we need to know for sure, can these guys generate pressure? Because no matter who you are, if you are a CFL starting quarterback and nobody's pressuring you, nobody's in your face, you're going to be able to complete passes all day long. And so I think that's what I really want to look for this week as the Argos head to Hamilton this Saturday for a preseason game. I want to see some pressure generated. It doesn't have to be sacks, but it has to make the quarterback uncomfortable. You have to get in his face. There have to be hits and knockdowns and hurries and pressures. And if they can't deliver those things, it doesn't matter how good your secondary is. It doesn't matter how good your linebacker play is. It's going to look like a problem if you're not able to get that quarterback a little bit off balance.
Yeah, and the big question, of course, the big thing for people to look for is, how much heat has to be sent to achieve pressure? Do you have to send one extra person? Do you have to send six, to get pressure? They sent six a couple of times today. It's good, but that's obviously not ideal from a defensive point of view. So, yeah, I think that will certainly be the preseason question to watch for.
Yeah, and you just can't live like that. Like, you can't live zero blitz. I love zero blitzes, but that can't be your game plan. That can't be the only way you get pressure on the quarterback, because you're going to get burned. And it didn't happen today. Like, I don't know if we saw any. We saw a few zero blitzes, but I don't know if we saw any completions off of that. We saw quarterbacks just missing receivers in the sort of deep middle area, but yeah, nothing I don't think that connected, but it will. At some point that's going to burn you. So there's got to be a better way.
I mean, teams, like anything, teams adjust. If they know you're going to send the house, teams will game plan for that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, before we wrap up here, JB, let's just go through very quickly, I guess, the positional battles that we're hoping we'll sort out, because we know the answer at quarterback. Chad Kelly's the quarterback. You're going to see Kadeem Carey at the running back spot, some Kevin Brown in there, of course, too. I think we know who the receivers are. We don't necessarily know what order they're in, but I think we're looking like with that Canadian receiving core, you got, with Mattel and Mayala and Brissett and Unger, with all, there's so many options on the Canadian side, and we know Tavares and Coxia on the other side. The offensive line, it's just more about juggling. We kind of know who the guys are going to be, I guess. Maybe there's some question as to exactly where they'll play, but I think a lot of that has been answered already. We just got to see it in action. For me, it's going to be that defensive line again, and then where you position your DBs, like where you want everyone, those guys that have all that flexibility, versatility, where they slot in. But the safety spot to me is the question I want answered. Is it going to be Tyshawn Blackburn back there starting day one? Because they have the flexibility to go American if they want. If they feel like they are going to be in a better position with an entire American umbrella in the secondary, they can do that. But I'm not sure they're going to go that route. But Canadian-wise, if you've got 4 offensive linemen, 3 receivers, that's already enough. And we know the will linebacker spot's going to be Canadian because they've only got Canadian will linebackers. So that's already 8. So I guess we'll see how that shakes down. But for me, what I'm going to be watching for on Saturday, safety, defensive line. I don't know. I'm excited to see some of those guys out there too. Lanier and Christmas and Cox and
I thought Christmas looked nice. I thought Christmas looked nice today. I did think the inside defensive line, the interior looked good. I know there weren't a lot of run plays, but I mean, I thought that they pushed. It's really the edge where there didn't seem to be anybody with the first step that might scare a tackle.
And again, it will be different a little bit when you get to that, get to actual game action. You're not playing against the same guys that you've been seeing every day for the last couple of weeks. So hopefully a few people will jump out, and we're going to have some players to talk about after this Saturday's preseason game. So on the docket coming up, Saturday. If you can get out to Hamilton, go out there. Get out. There's tickets available. Get out to see your Argos at Hamilton for the preseason opener. But absolutely make sure you are in Guelph on Friday night, May 30th. Both these games are 7 o'clock starts. But there's nothing like watching a preseason game in Guelph. That stadium, there's just something about it. We've talked about it before, JB. Love watching football there. Even today, watching, there was a great little crowd on hand for what is, just it's not a real event. It's it's just a scrimmage. It lasts less than an hour, but still a great enthusiastic turnout for that. But for preseason games, when that place is packed, and you got the Hamilton Tiger Cats in town, it's pretty awesome. So this Saturday, 7 o'clock at the Donut Box, and then next Friday, May 30th, 7 o'clock at Alumni Stadium in Guelph. Make sure you catch both of those preseason games. Well, that will just about do it for us, JB, on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. For JB, I'm Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.